When my own mother told me not to come to my sister's wedding because my success would ruin her big day, I didn't cry. I booked a flight to Italy and built a wedding of my own that the world would never forget. I was sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor of my small apartment, surrounded by a sea of glossy wedding photos. The Vermont wedding I'd shot last weekend had turned out even better than I imagined. The bride's cream-colored gown against that fiery autumn backdrop, perfect contrast, perfect light. My favorite shot? The couple standing under a canopy of maple trees, their fingers barely touching as golden leaves swirled around them. It looked like something out of a dream. I was halfway through organizing the photos into album layouts when my phone started ringing. Mom. Her name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I just stared at it, my finger hovering over the green accept button. "Hi, Mom," I said, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder. "Courtney," she said sharply. Her tone had that familiar crisp edge, the one that made me instantly brace myself. "I need to talk to you about Lily's wedding." I smiled a little, relieved. Finally, something easy. "Yeah, I was actually planning to call her this week. I've got a few ideas for her photography. There's this shot I can already see in my head that would be perfect for Don't Come. Another just dance of the world." The coffee cup slipped from my hand. It hit the floor and shattered, splashing hot liquid across my photos. Hours of work, ruined in an instant. "What?" My voice didn't even sound like mine. "You'll ruin your sister's wedding," Mom said, calm and cold, like she was telling me the weather. I froze, still staring at the coffee spreading across the floor. "Lily needs all the attention. Your success would overshadow her day." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. "Mom, that doesn't make any sense. I'm her only sister." She didn't pause. "All the invitations have gone out. Everyone's received theirs." The silence stretched, heavy. "Everyone, except you." My stomach dropped. The words hit like a punch, and suddenly I was 12 again, watching my drawings get taken off the fridge to make room for Lily's stick figures. Sitting alone at the kids' table while she sat on Dad's lap at the adults. Listening to my parents explain that Lily needed the spotlight because she was younger, or sensitive, or whatever excuse fit the day. "Mom," I whispered. "I've photographed 180 weddings. I could help. This is your gift to her," she said softly. And that tone, gentle, pitying, was somehow worse than her anger. "You've always needed to be the center of attention, Courtney. For once, let your sister have her moment." My throat tightened. "Let me talk to Lily." The worst nasted my cannering self. "She agrees completely," Mom said quickly. "This was partly her idea." That stopped me cold. "Partly her idea." I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even breathe. I just dialed my father's number with shaking hands. He picked up on the second ring. "Court, everything okay?" "Dad," I said. "Mom just told me I'm not invited to Lily's wedding." There was a long pause. "Too long. It's for the best, Court," he said finally. I felt like the floor disappeared under me. "You don't mean that," he sighed. "Your absence is a gift to your sister. Be selfless for once. Be selfless." That old refrain, the same one he used when he made me take down my first photography trophy, the one I'd won at 12 because Lily felt bad. I stared at the ruined photos scattered across my floor, strangers caught in moments of real love. More love than my family had ever shown me. "I won't beg for an invitation to my own sister's wedding," I said, my voice shaking but steady enough. "Don't be dramatic." Mom's voice cut in. They were on speakerphone. "Of course they were. Think about someone besides yourself." I let out a bitter laugh. "I've spent my entire life thinking about everyone else," I said quietly. "Hiding my accomplishments, making myself smaller." Dad's tone hardened. "All your cousins will be there. Everyone's looking forward to celebrating with Lily. Don't make this difficult." That was it. The unspoken message. The story they'd been telling about me for years, the selfish, attention-seeking older sister who always ruined things. "I understand," I said finally. Even though I didn't. Not really. What I understood was that this would never stop unless I stopped it. When I hung up, the apartment was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. That's when the front door opened. "Courtney?" Ethan's voice echoed down the hall. My boyfriend stepped inside, camera bag slung over one shoulder, eyes instantly landing on the chaos-broken mug. "Coffee. Ruined prints. What happened?" he asked, crossing the room in 2 steps. I couldn't even form words. The story came out in pieces, between sobs, the call, the justification, the years of being second to Lily. He knelt beside me, careful not to step on the glass, and started picking up the photos. "They've done this your entire life," he said quietly. "It's not right." He blotted the coffee stains off the prints with gentle hands. "Your sister's wedding is about her," he said after a while. "But your life is about you." I looked up at him. Something clicking into place. The choice wasn't between going to Lily's wedding or staying home. It was between staying small or finally standing tall. I've spent my whole life making myself smaller, I whispered. Maybe it's time to stop. 3 weeks dragged by like wet cement. I buried myself in work editing, retouching, trying to drown out the silence from my family. No calls, no texts. Just nothing. Then one afternoon, my phone lit up. Amanda, Court, she said before I could even say hello. You won't believe what Lily just posted. Amanda had been friends with both me and Lily since high school. She was the bridge, the one who tried to stay neutral. I'm not sure I want to know, I said. But my curiosity betrayed me. Miami Beach, $800,000 budget. White tulips flown in from Holland. 8-course dinner with a celebrity chef. My stomach twisted. 800,000? Bradley's parents are paying for most of it. She hesitated. Court, there's more. Jenny, she's one of the bridesmaids, heard something. Bradley told Lily he didn't want you there. I blinked. What? He's never even met me. Lily told him you make everything about yourself. Amanda said softly. She told stories about how you stole attention at her Sweet 16. About your scholarship ceremony, overshadowing her debate win. I laughed bitterly. The scholarship ceremony lasted 10 minutes. My parents made us rush out so we wouldn't miss her debate. We didn't even stop for ice cream. Another Nocian came. After we hung up, I opened Instagram. There it was, Mom's latest post. Lily and Bradley surrounded by white roses, champagne glasses raised high. The caption read, "Sometimes the kindest thing is to step back and let others shine." She didn't even need to tag me. The message was clear. That afternoon, I pulled out old family albums. Photo after photo. The pattern was obvious now, me standing slightly off-center. My smile dimmed, always just out of frame. Ethan came home to find me sitting on the floor, surrounded by old pictures. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat beside me, picking up a photo from a beach vacation years ago. "You look like you're holding your breath in this one," he murmured. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up a folder labeled Courtney Client Reviews. He started reading them out loud. Courtney didn't just photograph our wedding, she captured the moment I realized I wanted to spend my life with this person. She made our day magical. She has a gift for seeing people as they truly are. Dozens of reviews like that, people who saw me, who valued what I did. "These people see you," Ethan said softly. "Your family can't." I looked down at a photo of 16-year-old me, holding my first camera. My smile was small, careful. I remember I didn't want Lily to feel bad that she'd gotten a B on a math test that week. I thought if I just achieved enough, they'd finally be proud, I said quietly. But that was never the deal, was it? Ethan shook his head. That was their story. Not yours. It was past midnight when my phone buzzed again. Lily. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, debating. Then I answered. "Hey," she said, her voice a little slurred. "Are you awake?" "I am now," I said carefully. "I'm at Hannah's bachelorette weekend. Everyone's asleep but me. I miss you, Court." The ache in my chest tightened. "Then why am I not invited to your wedding?" She sighed. "Mom's afraid you'll charm everyone. You always do. And Bradley's parents, well, they have all these expectations. Everything has to be perfect. And I'd ruin it by existing?" I asked. "You don't understand what it's like," she whispered. "Sometimes it's hard being the favorite. The expectations, they crush me." I almost laughed. "You're worried about expectations? I've spent my whole life trying not to outshine you." "That's not true." "It is, and you know it." Silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, "I should go." And hung up. I sat there in the dark, phone still in my hand. Ethan found me an hour later, sitting on the couch staring at nothing. "What if we got away for a weekend?" he said gently, pulling me into his arms. "Clear your head." The next night, we met our friends Sophia and Michael for dinner. They were both photographers, too kind, creative, blunt when needed. I hadn't told them about the wedding situation, but somehow, they already knew. "Your family can't see your light," Sophia said fiercely over her pasta. "Because they're the ones dimming it." Michael nodded. "This isn't about revenge, Court. It's about reclaiming your story." "How?" I asked. "By living well," Sophia said. "By creating something beautiful." Their words stayed with me the whole walk home through the cool Seattle air. Ethan reached for my hand. "They're right," I said quietly. "If I keep waiting for their approval, I'll never stop shrinking." "Then stand tall," he said simply. And for the first time, I decided to. The next morning, the sunlight slipped through the curtains, painting soft golden stripes across our bed. Ethan was already awake, sitting by the window with his laptop open. "Come look at this," he said. I stretched, half asleep. "What are you scheming now?" He turned the screen toward me. A photo of a stone villa perched on a cliff above the bluest water I'd ever seen. The Amalfi Coast. What am I looking at? I asked, sitting beside him. Remember Giovanni? The director from the Milan documentary last year? I nodded. Giovanni, the eccentric filmmaker with wild silver hair who'd adored Ethan and spent half their shoot talking about light and life. He rents his family's villa for small weddings, Ethan said, clicking through more photos. A stone terrace overlooking endless sea, flowering vines spilling down ancient walls, the kind of view that didn't look real until you stood there. It's beautiful, I murmured. But my chest tightened. Why are you showing me this? He looked at me with that calm, knowing expression of his. Because we've been together 4 years, and every time we talk about getting married, we come up with a reason to wait. I blinked. You mean? I mean, he said softly. We've been postponing our happiness to avoid their disapproval. It hit me like a wave. He was right. Every decision, where to live, when to travel, what to celebrate, had always been made with that invisible question hanging over us. Will my family approve? I stared at the photos again. The villa. The sea. The light. Ethan scrolled to the calendar. September 15th is available. My photographer's brain kicked in immediately. That's perfect golden hour timing on the Amalfi Coast. 1 month before Lily's wedding, he said softly. I turned to him, half laughing, half shocked. You think we should get married right before my sister's wedding? He smiled. I think we should get married when we want. Where we want. No production. No family politics. Just us. I looked at the screen again, and for the first time in weeks, I felt excited. Free. September 15th, I whispered. That's perfect. Is that a yes? I laughed, really laughed for the first time since the call from my mother. Yes, let's do it. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I walked out onto the deck, phone in hand, while Ethan slept peacefully inside. I stared at my mother's name for a long time before pressing call. She answered on the third ring. Courtney, is everything all right? The ratified fell time. Where were Quaid? Everything's fine, I said, my voice calm. Actually better than fine. I wanted to tell you that Ethan and I are getting married. There was a silence so sharp I could almost hear it. When did this happen? She finally asked. We've been together 4 years, I said. The timing feels right. We found a small villa in Amalfi, just 25 guests, very intimate. You can't possibly plan a wedding while Lily is planning hers. She snapped. Do you have any idea how stressed she is? This will upset her terribly. Her words used to slice straight through me. Not today. I'm not asking for permission, Mom, I said gently. I'm sharing news. And they were the company said of the lauderd nut chatters. In another farmony when the Iden sell fies. This is exactly what I mean about you always needing attention, she snapped. First, you make a fuss about not being invited to Lily's wedding, and now you're planning your own right before hers. I took a breath. This isn't about Lily. This is about the life Ethan and I are building. Richard, she called to my father. Courtney is trying to upstage Lily's wedding with her own. I closed my eyes. But instead of shame, I felt peace. I have to go, Mom, I said quietly. I just wanted you to hear it from me. Courtney. Goodbye, Mom. And this time, I ended the call on my terms. The sunlight warmed my shoulders as I sat back on the deck, breathing in the crisp air. For once, I didn't feel guilt. Just lightness. When I went back inside, Ethan was making coffee. How'd it go? He asked. Exactly as expected, I said, smiling. She thinks I'm trying to upstage Lily, but I didn't apologize. I didn't back down. He handed me a steaming mug and grinned. Proud of you. My phone buzzed again. Messages from Jasmine and Taylor, 2 of my photographer friends. I'd texted them the night before about our plans. Both were overjoyed and wanted to shoot the ceremony. They said it's about time someone captured my moments for once, I told Ethan. He laughed. I emailed Giovanni. He's thrilled to host us, says the light that week is magical. All day, messages poured in, clients offering to connect me with Italian florists, musicians, caterers. It felt like the world was conspiring to help. That afternoon, an email came from Giovanni himself. He'd attached a few updated photos of the villa, along with a handwritten note. My villa has hosted many weddings, but rarely ones between true artists. The house awaits your vision. I stared at those words for a long time. My heart full. For the first time, I understood what my clients felt when they saw their wedding photos, the feeling of being truly seen. That night, under a sky freckled with stars, Ethan asked, should we invite them? My family? He nodded. Risk the drama, or focus on creating the day we want? I stared out at the lake, the reflection of the moon rippling on the surface. What matters most in a wedding photo? He asked. Authenticity, I said immediately. Then that's your answer, he whispered, kissing my forehead. And just like that, the question that had haunted me for years, what will they think, finally lost its power. Over the next week, our apartment transformed into what Ethan jokingly called Mission Freedom. Wedding albums lined the floor in semicircles. Color swatches and timeline charts covered the walls. My photographer's brain was in overdrive, analyzing every detail, not for revenge, but for meaning. I wasn't trying to outdo Lily's wedding. I was building something real. This doesn't feel like payback anymore, Ethan said one night, flipping through an album from a Napa Valley wedding I'd shot years ago. It's not, I said. It's about creating something genuine. Something that reflects us. Very wanted in reflux de quarters, the wannable majors with photographs of the cores. We stayed up late that night talking about what made weddings truly meaningful. It wasn't the fancy venues or designer gowns. It was the moments, the unguarded tears, the laughter. The way two people looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. Let's tell our story, Ethan said suddenly, his filmmaker instincts kicking in. Not theirs. I smiled. A documentary wedding, exactly. We started sketching out ideas, assembling a team, friends who understood our vision. People who captured truth, not perfection. By the next evening, we had everything mapped out. 2 photographers, 1 documentary crew, 25 guests. Every detail intentional. Then, the phone rang. Amanda again. Court, she said, voice tight. Lily's freaking out. Apparently Bradley's cousin follows your friend Maria on Instagram. She saw your Italian wedding post. Now your mom's calling everyone, telling them you're trying to sabotage Lily's big day. I closed my eyes, already picturing it. The family group chats lighting up, the whispered calls, the narrative forming without me. What did you tell her? I asked quietly. I told her I'd talk to you first, Amanda said. Court, are you doing this to get back at them? A week ago, maybe I wouldn't have had an answer. But now, surrounded by sketches and photos and plans made from love, not anger, I knew the truth. No, I said softly. I'm not competing, I'm creating something real. After I hung up, Ethan was standing in the doorway, watching me. They're mobilizing the family, I said. Does that change anything? He asked. I looked around the room, the evidence of our new beginning scattered everywhere. No, I said. We keep building. 3 days later, I was sitting by the window with my laptop when Giovanni's email arrived. He'd sent fresh photos of the villa stone walls draped with jasmine, olive trees framing the terrace. The light will be golden, he wrote. Ethan was packing equipment in the living room. Did you see what Giovanni found? I called. A local florist who works only with jasmine garlands. He grinned. That's perfect. Marco and Sarah confirmed too, they'll handle the main documentary footage. Our home had officially become a planning headquarters. Mood boards on the walls, fabric swatches pinned beside sketches of the arbor. Nothing extravagant, just simple, meaningful, beautiful. I slid an envelope across the table to Ethan. Finalized invitations. 25 people. Only the ones who've actually been there for us. He opened one, tracing his fingers over the pressed olive leaves and calligraphy. Elegant. Timeless. You. Elegant. Channel red. Timeless. I smiled. Exactly. Then my phone buzzed. Lily, I hesitated before picking it up. The Italian consulate said you filed for a marriage license, the text read. Why are you trying to steal my spotlight? My stomach dropped. I showed the message to Ethan. How would she even know that? Your mom must have connections, he said quietly. What if they try to interfere? I whispered. Then we adapt, he said. The people coming to Italy are the ones who matter. But the messages kept coming, my cousin Jenna, my college roommate, even my mother's neighbor. Each one echoing the same script. Why are you doing this to your sister? I felt that familiar wave of guilt trying to rise, but this time, I didn't let it. That evening, I stood on the balcony, watching the Seattle skyline blur into night. My phone rang again. Giovanni. Courtney, he said, his Italian accent thicker than usual. I received a strange call today. A woman claiming to be your mother. She asked many questions about the ceremony. My heart sank. I'm so sorry, Giovanni. My family is complicated. Do not worry, he said firmly. I told her nothing. Italian privacy laws protect you. And I have informed my staff no uninvited guests will disturb your celebration. Relief flooded through me. When I hung up, Ethan joined me on the balcony, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Everything okay? He asked. She called Giovanni, I said. But he handled it. He's even adding extra security. Ethan kissed my temple. Then we focus on us. What happens in Miami doesn't matter. And for the first time, I believed him. A week later, dawn broke soft and gray over Seattle. I was already awake, my laptop open on the kitchen counter, mapping out the photography timeline for the ceremony. Ethan was still asleep in the bedroom, his breathing steady and peaceful. The phone buzzed across the table. I glanced at the screen. Mom? My stomach tightened, but I picked up. Hello. Her voice was sharp. You need to cancel Italy. I blinked. Good morning to you too. I'm serious, Courtney, she snapped. But there was something new in her tone, not just control, but desperation. If you go through with this, you'll never be welcome in this family again. I leaned against the counter, taking a slow sip of coffee. That's your choice, Mom, not mine. Don't twist this. Her voice rose. You know exactly what you're doing. 1 month before your sister's wedding? After everything we've done for you? Then a new voice came through the speaker. My father's. You've always been selfish, he said flatly. This just proves it. I stared out the window, at the pale light breaking over the city skyline. I'm marrying the person I love, I said quietly. In a place that means something to us. How is that selfish? There was a rustling sound, and then Mom's voice again, cold, furious. Lily's been hospitalized with anxiety attacks because of you. I froze. What? She's under enormous stress, Mom continued, almost triumphant. Her doctor says what you're doing could affect her long-term health. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. That's not true. She was posting from a yacht in the Bahamas 3 days ago. She pushed herself to go, Mom said smoothly, because she didn't want to disappoint her bridesmaids. My phone buzzed again, a new text flashing across the screen. From my cousin Rachel. Is it true you're stealing Lily's thunder? Everyone's talking about it. Not reprinted in strong. Lost comms the livers. Then another from my father. Your grandmother may not be around for another wedding. She's heartbroken you'd choose a foreign ceremony she can't attend. And another, from Mom's neighbor Susan. Honey, are you sure about Italy? Sounds expensive. Unnecessary. The coordination was almost impressive. They were flooding my phone, my inbox, my entire piece with guilt. Mom's voice sliced through again. Cancel Italy. Or accept that you're no longer part of this family. My throat was dry. Is that what Lily wants too? This is coming from all of us, she said coldly. You've pushed your sister to her breaking point. There said it also want to you projected. I glanced at the wall where Ethan and I had pinned our plans, sketches of the terrace, the jasmine vines, our handwritten vows. I'll think about what you said, I told her finally. Not because I meant it, but because I needed the call to end. When I hung up, I sat down hard on the kitchen stool, hands shaking. Ethan appeared in the doorway, sleepy-eyed but instantly alert. Your parents again? I nodded. They've escalated. If we don't cancel, I'm officially excommunicated. He crossed the room and poured coffee into my mug. You okay? I'm angry, I admitted. They're rallying everyone, cousins, neighbors, even Lily's doctor apparently. They said she's in the hospital with anxiety. It's absurd. His jaw tightened. That's a new low. I think we should call Adam, I said, my voice steadier now. Ask about security, just in case. Ethan nodded. Already ahead of you. Talked to him yesterday. He's got a local contact in Amalfi, discreet, trustworthy. I stared at him. You planned that? He shrugged. I heard your mom on the phone with Aunt Carol last week. I knew this was coming. Something warm and solid settled in my chest. You really think of everything, don't you? He smiled faintly. Just trying to keep your light from getting dimmed again. That day, we threw ourselves into final preparations. I called Maria and Alex, our photographer friends, to confirm their flights. Ethan reached out to Marcus, the documentary filmmaker, about travel logistics. Giovanni emailed back confirming the jasmine garlands, olive branch decor, and a few minor paperwork details. By sunset, we had adjusted every plan, every potential disruption accounted for without compromising the vision. The villa would have quiet security. The guest list stayed exactly the same. 25 people who had proven, time and time again, that they loved us for who we were. When the phone rang again that night, I almost ignored it. But the caller ID made me freeze. Lily. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? In the data well thanks to we come and wire daughter. You as well thanks to Markovly. Her voice was soft. Did Mom call you? Yes. I didn't ask her to, she said after a long pause. I didn't respond. Is it beautiful? She asked quietly. The place in Italy? That caught me off guard. Yeah. It overlooks the Mediterranean. The light at sunset is perfect. She made a small sound, almost wistful. 25 guests, I said, my tone gentle. Just the people who matter most. I wish I was having your wedding, she said suddenly. Mine's. It's a circus. 230 people I barely know. Most of them Bradley's parents' friends. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger, empathy. It's not too late to change things, I said quietly. You know I can't, she whispered. Mom would never forgive me. I smiled sadly. Mom's forgiveness seems pretty conditional these days. She laughed, bitterly. Always has been. There was a pause. Then, softly, just take good pictures, okay? And then she hung up. The next morning, Ethan and I stood in the airport terminal, luggage by our feet, boarding passes in hand. Last chance to back out, he said, grinning, though his eyes searched mine for hesitation. I looked at him. Then at the photo on my phone, Giovanni's villa bathed in golden light. No turning back, I said, slipping my hand into his. We boarded the plane, finding our seats by the window. As the aircraft taxied down the runway, I reviewed my vows one last time, words that spoke not about rebellion or defiance, but freedom. I promised to stand tall beside you. To create beauty without apology. To remember that love doesn't require permission. The engines roared. Seattle fell away beneath the clouds. Ahead of us lay Italy, and the life we were finally choosing for ourselves. I closed my eyes, smiled, and whispered again. No turning back. Italy was everything I'd imagined and more. The air itself felt different, warmer, softer, as if it carried the weight of centuries of love stories. Giovanni met us at the airport with the kind of exuberant welcome only Italians can pull off, arms wide, grin infectious. My artists, he declared, kissing both our cheeks. You came to make beauty, see? We laughed, nodding. The drive to the villa wound through coastal cliffs lined with lemon trees and wildflowers. When we finally arrived, I stepped out of the car and just stood there, breath caught in my throat. Stone arches, flowering jasmine, the sea stretching endlessly beyond the terrace. The air smelled like salt and sunlight. This is it, I whispered. This is where it all changes. The stand-in, Giovanni clasped his hands together. The light here, it tells the truth, he said, eyes twinkling. It shows who you really are. I didn't know then how right he'd be. We spent the next few days finalizing details, arranging chairs on the terrace, testing light angles, coordinating shots with Maria and Alex. The ceremony would be small, simple, perfect. Every night, Ethan and I would sit on the terrace as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sea gold. And every night, that guilt, the one that had lived under my skin for years, grew fainter, until it was barely a whisper. This wasn't about defying my family anymore. It was about redefining myself. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I wandered down to the garden, barefoot, the air heavy with jasmine. The villa was quiet, our guests asleep, the waves murmuring below. I looked up at the sky, a deep velvet scattered with stars. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because I was about to get married, because I was finally free. The morning of the wedding began like a photograph I'd been waiting my whole life to take. Golden sunlight poured through the stone arches of Giovanni's villa, catching on the olive branches that framed the terrace. The Mediterranean stretched below us, an endless wash of deep blue. I stood barefoot by the window, watching the wind ripple through the jasmine vines. For years, I'd spent my days capturing other people's love stories. But now, finally, the lens was turning toward my own. Behind me, Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirror, his reflection calm but glowing. Is it everything you hoped for? He asked. Better, I whispered. He smiled, that quiet, steady smile I'd fallen in love with the day we met. Then it's exactly right. Outside, Giovanni was already bustling around, giving last-minute instructions to the crew. The light is perfetto today, he declared. In 40 years, I have never seen it more beautiful. I couldn't help but laugh. You say that every day, Giovanni. Yes, he said, winking. But today, I mean it. The terrace had been transformed. White chairs lined the stone floor, facing an arch woven with jasmine and olive leaves. 25 guests, friends, colleagues, kind souls, who had stood beside us when family hadn't mingled quietly. Their laughter carried on the sea breeze. There was no towering floral display, no string quartet, no choreographed spectacle. Just authenticity, raw, unpolished, true. I slipped into the villa's master bedroom where my dress hung by the window. It wasn't a princess gown. Just a simple silk dress that moved like water when I walked. I'd chosen it because it looked like something I'd wear if I were photographing my own wedding. As I put it on, I thought about the hundreds of brides I'd photographed, their trembling hands, nervous laughter, the moment their eyes softened as they looked down the aisle. For years, I'd wondered what that moment felt like from the other side of the lens. Now I knew. It felt like exhaling after holding your breath for 27 years. 10 minutes before the ceremony, Marcus, Ethan's filmmaker friend, checked his camera setup. We rolling documentary style, he said. No posing. No retakes. Just truth. Exactly, Ethan said. We're telling our story, not someone else's. Maria and Alex, our photographer friends, stood at opposite ends of the terrace, coordinating angles like a dance. We'd worked together for years. They knew my rhythm, my instincts, everything was in place. As the first notes of the guitar drifted through the air, not a traditional wedding march, but Northern Sky by Nick Drake, the world seemed to pause. I walked alone, no one giving me away. No father's arm to hold. No symbolism of ownership or permission, because for the first time, I truly belonged to myself. Ethan turned as I stepped into the sunlight. His expression, I'll never forget it. Not polite admiration. Not surprise. Just that kind of quiet awe you see in the best wedding photos, the look that says, I see you. Completely. Giovanni gave a small nod to Marcus. The camera began to roll. The officiant smiled warmly at us. Marriage, he said, his voice steady over the sound of the waves, is not the joining of two people, but the creation of a new story, one written together, day by day. Ethan took my hands. I promise to see you, he said softly. Not just look at you but see you. To celebrate your success as my own. To build a home where your light is never dimmed. My throat tightened. I unfolded my vows, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. I promise to stand tall beside you, I said. To create beauty without apology. To remember that love doesn't need permission. As we slipped the rings onto each other's fingers, the sun dipped lower, spilling gold across the terrace. The Mediterranean glowed behind us, blue turning to amber. Maria crouched low, capturing the exact moment the light hit the bands. Alex shifted angles, framing us beneath the jasmine arch. It was perfect. Every detail, every breath, every heartbeat aligned with the rhythm of something larger than us. When the officiant pronounced us married, the terrace erupted with applause, real, unfiltered joy. No polite clapping, no forced smiles. Just celebration. The dinner afterward felt more like a family reunion than a wedding reception. Giovanni insisted on making a toast. He stood, glass raised high, his Italian accent thick with emotion. I have seen many American movies about weddings, he began, drawing laughter from everyone. Always there is drama. Always someone objects. But true love. He paused, looking at Ethan and me. True love requires courage, courage to claim your own story. I blinked hard, swallowing tears. He was right. That's what this was about all along, reclaiming my story. As twilight deepened, strings of lights shimmered above the terrace. The guitarist played soft melodies while our guests danced under the stars. There was no choreographed father-daughter dance, no towering cake-cutting spectacle, no traditions that didn't belong to us. Just laughter. Just light. At one point, James, one of the photographers, walked over, camera in hand. Courtney, I got something I think you'll want to see. He turned his camera screen toward me. There it was, a shot of Ethan and me in profile, hands joined, framed by jasmine vines, the Mediterranean glowing gold behind us. The light had created a natural halo, soft and warm, wrapping around us like a blessing. Can I post it? He asked. It's special. I could barely speak. I just nodded. He smiled and walked away. A few minutes later, Vanessa, his photography partner, came over. That photo's going to break the internet, she said. I laughed. It's just a wedding picture. She shook her head. No. It's art. Later, Ethan and I slipped away from the crowd, standing together at the terrace edge. My phone buzzed over and over. Wow, Ethan said, scrolling through the notifications. James's photo already has 800 comments. I frowned. Wait, what? Listen to this one, he said, reading aloud. Most beautiful ceremony I've ever seen from Helena Baxter. I froze. The Helena Baxter? He nodded. The wedding photographer whose book sits on your desk? She just commented on your photo. Before I could react, more notifications flooded in. The Italian Tourism Board had reshared it with the caption, Wedding of the Year. Magazines were requesting permission to feature the photo. Strangers were commenting about authenticity, about love, about light. Ethan handed me the phone, grinning. This is what they were afraid of, he said softly. Not that you'd ruin Lily's wedding, but that you'd prove them wrong. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, then looked out at the darkening sea. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. Giovanni approached, his face warm and proud. Your vision has honored this place, he said quietly. Many come to Italy to take from its beauty. You have added to it. I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. Then James ran over again, breathless. Courtney, you need to see this. Your photo just hit 1 million views. 1 million. InStyle magazine commented, he said, showing me the screen. They want your contact info. It is a restum spect. When it simple changes parting to y plastic. Ethan looked at me, astonished. You're trending worldwide, but the strangest part? I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel hungry for approval, because for the first time, I didn't need it. The validation didn't come from views or magazines or strangers online. It came from the joy I'd created, the truth I'd finally claimed. As midnight approached, the guests drifted inside, leaving us alone on the terrace. The sea shimmered in the moonlight, the air still heavy with jasmine. Ethan pulled me close. "How does it feel?" he whispered. I thought about it, really thought. It felt like standing in the center of the best photograph I'd ever taken. Not posed. Not perfect. Just honest. And for the first time, that was enough. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the villa's tall windows, warm and golden. The air smelled faintly of salt and jasmine. Ethan stirred beside me, his hand brushing my arm. "You're already awake," he mumbled, still half asleep. "Couldn't sleep," I said softly, scrolling through my phone. Notifications were still exploding. The photo had gone beyond viral, it was everywhere. Magazines, photography blogs, travel pages, all reposting it with captions like, "Authenticity redefined," or, "The most beautiful wedding in Italy." And yet, what stunned me most weren't the comments about the scenery or the dress. It was what people felt when they saw it. There's something real about this photo. It doesn't look like a performance. It looks like peace. This feels like love that doesn't need an audience. I'd spent my whole life being told I took up too much space. Now the world was saying the opposite. "Keep shining." Ethan leaned over, reading the screen. "1 million views? 2 million? 3. He grinned. "You've officially broken the internet, Mrs. Palmer." "Don't call me that," I laughed. "Makes me sound like someone who irons napkins." He pulled me closer, still smiling. "Okay, Mrs. Palmer Anderson, international phenomenon. Thanks for watching as often's conces." By breakfast, even Giovanni had heard. "My villa is famous," he exclaimed, bursting into the terrace with a newspaper in hand. "Look, your photo is on La Repubblica." Sure enough, there it was. A full-page spread of us standing beneath the jasmine arch. The headline reading, "The fairy tale wedding that rewrote tradition." He kissed both my cheeks and declared, "You brought honor to this house, Courtney. Everyone in Amalfi is talking about the artists who captured the Sunday." I couldn't stop smiling, but beneath the joy, a small knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. Because I knew what was coming next. It started with a text from my cousin Amanda. "Your photo's on the news back home. Mom's group chat is losing its mind. Brace yourself." Then came another. "Your parents saw it." I put the phone down and stared at the table. Ethan reached for my hand. "Whatever they say, it doesn't change what this moment means." "I know," I said quietly. "But it's strange. All my life I wanted them to be proud. Now, even if they are, it doesn't matter anymore." He nodded. "That's growth, Court." Still, I couldn't help but check my messages. Nothing from Mom, nothing from Dad. Just silence. And somehow, that silence said everything. By afternoon, the villa had turned into a whirlwind of interviews. Italian wedding blogs wanted details. A UK lifestyle magazine requested permission to use our photos. A major photography journal emailed me about a feature. Maria and Alex were ecstatic. "Courtney, this could redefine your niche," Maria said, scrolling through analytics. "Authenticity as luxury, it's what couples are craving now. You've just proved that simple is powerful." I laughed, shaking my head. "I didn't mean to start a movement. I just wanted to get married." "Exactly," she said. "That's why it worked. The simple his problem tangi, Godden." That night, we gathered on the terrace one last time. Our chosen family, friends, colleagues, artists, all raising glasses under the stars. "To love," Giovanni said, lifting his wine. "To courage. And to standing tall." Clater. "To standing tall," everyone echoed. Ethan squeezed my hand beneath the table. "You realize this photo will outlive us, right?" he whispered. "It's timeless." "Maybe," I said softly. "But what matters is how it began. With a no. With being uninvited." He smiled. "The best stories start that way." The next morning, as we packed to leave Amalfi, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a journalist or a fan. It was a single message from Lily. "Your wedding looked beautiful." It looked more like you than mine looked like me. I stared at the screen for a long time. Ethan noticed the change in my expression. "Lily?" "Yeah." I showed him the text. He nodded. "You don't have to reply." "I know." I slipped the phone into my bag. It wasn't anger I felt anymore. Just a quiet sadness for her, and for the version of me that used to beg for that kind of validation. 6 months later, everything had changed. I woke one morning to find our photo on the cover of Modern Weddings International. The headline read, "The Amalfi Revolution. How one photographer redefined love through light." It was surreal. A viral photo had turned into a global story. Couples were writing to me from around the world, saying they wanted their weddings to feel like mine. Real, emotional, unapologetically honest. My inbox overflowed with offers, features, collaborations, even a documentary pitch from Netflix. Ethan leaned over my shoulder as I read. They're offering to follow you for a year, your process, your style, your clients. Revolutionary storytelling through still images. That's literally what they called it. I shook my head in disbelief. Me? The girl who wasn't even invited to her sister's wedding? He smiled. The girl who built her own. But the biggest surprise came a week later. I got another text from Lily. I keep looking at your photos. You were right. Authenticity matters more than perfection. Then another. I wish I'd had the courage to do what you did. And though I didn't reply, I felt something inside me settle. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just peace. In the months that followed, Ethan and I poured our energy into something new, something born from everything we'd learned. We founded the Love Without Permission Foundation. Its mission: to support young artists and photographers facing family disapproval or societal pressure to play small. To help them stand tall too. Giovanni became our first partner, donating part of his villa's income to fund grants for aspiring photographers. Your light, he told me during a video call, must help others see, and it did. In my studio back in Seattle, I hung the now famous wedding photo above my desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. It wasn't the light that made it beautiful, it was the truth. One afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. Your 3 o'clock is here, she said. A young woman walked in, clutching a portfolio. Her name was Jessica, a nervous 22-year-old from Portland. She showed me her photos raw, full of emotion, but hesitant. My parents think photography's just a hobby, she said quietly. They want me to finish my accounting degree. I looked at her, recognizing that familiar ache, the need to be seen, to be believed. Jessica, I said gently, your vision matters. Don't let anyone convince you it doesn't. Her eyes widened. I smiled. Your light doesn't diminish anyone else's. Ever. She left my studio with tears in her eyes, and a spot in our mentorship program. When the door closed, I turned to Ethan, who was setting up his camera to record for the foundation website. Documenting another transformation? I teased. He grinned. Of course. The world should see what courage looks like. That evening, I stood before a crowd at the International Vision Awards. The room went silent as I walked up to the podium, the golden trophy in my hand. The frames we choose define the stories we tell, I began. For years, I allowed others to frame mine, to crop me out, mute my colors, make me smaller. A pause. A deep breath. But authenticity isn't selfish. It's the greatest gift we can give to ourselves and to anyone seeking permission to shine. Applause filled the hall. As I stepped down from the stage, I thought about the shattered coffee cup, the ruined prints, that awful phone call that started it all, and I smiled. Because when people try to make you smaller, that's when you learn to stand tallest. 6 months after that night in Italy, I woke to the sound of rain against the studio window. Seattle was gray again, the kind of gray that felt heavy, almost nostalgic. But this time, it didn't bother me. The world outside could be cloudy. The light I needed was already inside. The Amalfi Revolution, as the press called it, had grown into something I couldn't have imagined. My wedding photo wasn't just viral anymore, it had become a movement. Couples, artists, even photographers I'd once idolized were embracing the same message. Authenticity over perfection. The emails came from everywhere. Your story gave me courage to quit my corporate job and start shooting again. I showed my parents your speech, they finally understand why photography matters to me. Thank you for reminding me that art doesn't need permission. In this was weight of their he-wall. And their bait on says in the pastly. And every time one of those messages arrived, I felt the same quiet truth settle inside me, the one I'd learned that day on the Amalfi Terrace. It was never about being seen by everyone. It was about being seen truly by a few. Ethan and I were busier than ever, but in the best way. The Love Without Permission Foundation had its first cohort of grant recipients, 10 young photographers from 5 different countries. One afternoon, I sat with Giovanni over a video call, reviewing their portfolios. This one, he said, pointing to the screen, has your courage. You can see it in the frame how she finds light even in the shadow. Right of his next week in wintry. The naughty exasti. She reminds me of Jessica, I said, smiling. Ah, the girl with trembling hands and fire in her eyes. He replied. You see, Courtney, this is your real legacy. Not the photograph. The people who learn from it. His words lingered long after the call ended. Legacy. I'd spent so long chasing approval that I'd never thought about legacy. Now it was growing all around me. Later that evening, Ethan walked into the studio holding a stack of letters. What are those? I asked. He grinned. Fan mail. Actual paper letters. From people who saw the documentary trailer. I laughed. People still do that? He nodded. Apparently when your story makes strangers cry, they find your P.O. box. He handed me the top letter, soft, folded carefully. The handwriting was familiar. My chest tightened. It was from Lily. I hesitated, then opened it. Court? I don't know if you'll ever read this. But I watched your documentary trailer. I cried. Not because I was jealous, because I finally understood. I used to think you were trying to steal the spotlight. Now I see you were just trying to exist in your own light. I'm sorry for how I treated you. For how we all did. Mom and Dad still don't talk about the wedding. But I do. I tell people it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Love, Lily. The room was silent except for the rain against the window. Ethan looked up from his desk. You okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I whispered. I finally am. A few weeks later, I got an invitation, Lily's baby shower. For a moment, I stared at the envelope, uncertain. Old wounds don't disappear overnight. They fade slowly, like bruises in reverse. But I went, not for closure, for peace. When I arrived, Lily met me at the door, her hand resting on her rounded belly. Court, she said softly. You came. I smiled. Of course I did. She hesitated, then hugged me awkwardly at first, then fully. And just like that, the years between us felt smaller. I named her middle name after you, she whispered. I blinked back tears. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she said. She should know what strength looks like. Back home that night, I stood in my studio, staring at the famous photo, the one that started everything. Ethan joined me, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. You thinking about her? Yeah, I said quietly. But not the way I used to. I think I finally understand that forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about choosing peace. He kissed the top of my head. You've always had a way of finding the light, even in the dark. I smiled. Guess I had to learn it the hard way. Months passed, seasons changed, and the world kept calling. Netflix released the documentary. Critics called it a love letter to truth. The foundation doubled its grants. Giovanni sent a photo from the terrace, new couples standing where we once had, framed by the same light. And every time I opened my inbox, there it was again, that quiet ripple of change, reaching further than I could see. One evening, I was invited to speak at a creative summit in Florence. The topic? Art and authenticity. As I stood on stage, the lights dimmed, and the screen behind me filled with that one image, Ethan and me, hands joined, sea glowing gold behind us. This, I began, was never meant to be famous. It was just a photograph. But it became something bigger, because it told the truth. The audience leaned forward, silent. For years, I thought being humble meant shrinking. That love meant pleasing. That art meant following rules. I was wrong. I took a breath, looking at the image glowing behind me. Authenticity doesn't demand attention. It invites connection. And when you stop asking for permission to shine, I smiled. The whole world starts to see the light you were carrying all along. And 20 wattas in Amerixilian and next him. After the talk, a young man approached me. Camera bag slung over his shoulder. Miss Palmer, he said nervously. I wanted to thank you. I used to think my photos weren't good enough. Then I saw your story. Now I just shoot what feels true. I smiled. Then you've already found your art. He grinned, blushing, and hurried away. Ethan appeared beside me, handing me a glass of wine. You realize you've become the person you once needed? I looked around the room, faces lit up, inspired, alive. Maybe that's what healing really is, I said. Becoming the person you needed when you were small. This is only as reciprocal. That night, back in our hotel, I opened the window. The Florentine skyline glowed under the moon. I thought about all the paths that led here, the broken coffee cup, the tears, the silence, the golden hour in Amalfi. If I could speak to the girl I was that day, the one sitting on the floor, coffee-stained photos scattered around her, I'd tell her this: you're not too much. You were just surrounded by people who wanted less. And one day, you'll learn that your light isn't meant to make others comfortable. It's meant to lead them home. The morning light in Florence had a way of feeling alive. It spilled through the curtains like it was curious, painting everything in gold. I stood at the hotel window, looking out at the city waking up below. Scooters buzzing, church bells echoing, the smell of espresso floating through the air. Ethan was still asleep, one arm draped over a stack of film reels he'd promised to review before our flight. His hair was a mess, his breathing soft, peaceful. For a moment, I just watched him, realizing how far we'd come. There had been so many times I thought love meant keeping quiet. But this, the quiet of being understood, this was different. This was peace that didn't ask for performance. I made coffee and opened my laptop. My inbox was full again, messages from around the world. Not about viral photos or Netflix features anymore, but about the foundation. I just got my first camera because of your scholarship. My parents finally came to my exhibit, they cried. You taught me that art is resistance. Every message felt like a seed taking root somewhere unseen. Giovanni had been right all along. Legacy wasn't about the image. It was about the ripple that image left behind. By afternoon, we were on a train heading north to Venice. A small detour before returning home. Ethan wanted footage for a new project, something about the emotional geography of light. I laughed when he pitched it. But watching him now, camera balanced on his knee as the landscape rolled by, I understood. We were both trying to capture the same thing, that fleeting intersection between truth and beauty. At one point, he lowered the camera and looked at me. You ever think about how that one phone call started all this? I smiled faintly. Every day. Do you ever wish it had gone differently? I thought for a moment. No. Because if it had, I might still be waiting for permission to live my own story. He nodded, pressing record again. That's your next documentary right there. The Presidents of this clan. The sea wind narrated. When we arrived in Venice, the city was alive with the shimmer of late afternoon light. Boats drifted by like dreams. Children chased pigeons through the piazza. The air smelled of salt and old stories. We wandered without a plan, hand in hand. No schedules, no emails, no deadlines. Just us. At a small cafe near the water, we sat outside, watching gondoliers glide by. The waiter brought us espresso and biscotti, and Ethan pulled out his camera again. Don't, I said, laughing. For once just be here. He grinned. But you're glowing. So is everyone in Italy. I teased. He set the camera down, reached across the table, and took my hand. You know, we never actually had a honeymoon. I laughed. You're right. Then let's start now. We spent the next few days like that, wandering through alleys that smelled of coffee and rain, taking boats to hidden islands, photographing each other just for fun, not for work, not for proof, just because it felt good to freeze a moment we'd want to remember. One evening, as the sun melted into the lagoon, I turned my lens on Ethan. He was laughing at something ridiculous I'd said, the golden light catching in his hair. I took the photo instinctively. Later, when I looked at it, I realized something. For years, I'd been chasing perfection, symmetry, composition, the perfect exposure, but this photo was imperfect in every technical way. And yet, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever captured, because it was ours. On our final night in Venice, we walked along the quiet canals. The water reflected the moon like a mirror. I thought of all the frames I'd taken over the years, thousands of weddings, countless faces, endless light. But this walking with Ethan, unhurried, unobserved, felt like the frame beyond the picture. The life that exists after the story ends. Ethan slipped his arm around me. What are you thinking about? En while genera fallen. To this far aguive. Infarted in no te. How light always finds a way in, I said softly. Even through cracks. He smiled. That's your next series. Maybe, I said. But it's also just life. When we flew back to Seattle a few days later, I returned to a studio transformed. The foundation team had grown. Jessica was now mentoring new photographers. The walls were lined with images from our grant recipients, weddings in small villages, portraits of families who had never been photographed before. Quiet moments of resilience. I walked slowly, taking it all in. Every image felt like a continuation of that day in Amalfi, a new angle of the same truth. One photo stopped me completely. It was taken by a 19-year-old recipient from India. Two women, hands intertwined, laughing under a broken umbrella during a monsoon. The light, wild and unplanned, poured through the storm clouds behind them. I smiled, whispering to myself. Perfection. Through imperfection. Jessica appeared beside me, clipboard in hand. They call it the Courage series. It's trending already. I turned to her. You should be proud. She smiled shyly. You started it. No. I said softly. We all did. Together. That night, when the studio was empty, I turned off the lights and sat by the window. Rain fell gently against the glass, Seattle's way of keeping time. I opened the letter from Lily again, the edges now worn and soft. For the first time, I didn't read it as an apology. I read it as love, imperfect, but love all the same. Ethan joined me, sitting quietly beside me in the dark. Thinking again? He asked. Always. He smiled. What's next, Mrs. Palmer? I looked out at the city lights and thought about all the people who'd ever been told to stay small, to dim their brilliance, to wait for permission. What's next? I repeated. More light. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and the reflection in the window caught our faces, two people who had learned that standing tall wasn't about defiance. It was about truth. And just before we turned off the last lamp, I whispered the words that had once changed everything for me. When people try to make you smaller, that's when you stand tallest. The next chapter of my life didn't begin with applause or headlines. It began quietly with mornings filled with coffee, soft music, and a sense of purpose I'd never known before. Seattle's skyline was pale against the winter fog. I sat by the window of my studio, editing photos from one of the Foundation's new projects, a series called Unposed Lives. It featured farmers, nurses, teachers, ordinary people, caught in moments of extraordinary honesty. The goal wasn't to romanticize them, it was to see them, really see them the way I wished someone had seen me all those years ago. Ethan came in, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You've been up since dawn," he said, handing me one. I smiled. "I've been thinking about expanding the foundation. Maybe take it international, host workshops in smaller communities. Give young artists resources instead of just grants." He leaned against the desk. "You're not thinking small anymore." "No," I said quietly. "I'm not." 2 weeks later, I found myself boarding a plane to India for our first international program. 10 photographers, each with their own stories, waited in a small classroom in Jaipur. They were nervous, hopeful, bright-eyed, a reflection of who I'd once been. I began with a single question. "Who here has ever been told they couldn't do this?" Every hand rose. "Good," I said. "That means you're in the right place." We spent the next week walking through crowded markets, photographing vendors, dancers, and children playing cricket in the dust. I watched these young artists learn how to see not just what was in front of them, but what was behind it. At the end of the workshop, one of them, a shy boy named Arjun, approached me. "My parents wanted me to become a banker," he said softly. "But after hearing you talk about light, I think I want to spend my life chasing it instead." I smiled. "Then chase it. The world needs your eyes." He looked at me like he was memorizing the moment. I'll remember that, and I believed him. Back in Seattle, the Foundation's impact was spreading faster than we could track. Jessica was now running her own photo exhibit, Shadows Speak. Giovanni had hosted a second retreat at the villa, inviting young couples from around the world to rediscover love through art. One night, Ethan and I sat together watching the live stream from Italy. The villa glowed on screen, bathed in the same golden light where our story had begun. Giovanni appeared on camera, older now but with the same spark in his eyes. "When the Americans came," he told the crowd, "they brought not fame but freedom." The audience applauded, and Ethan smiled at me. "He still talks about you like you're a myth." I laughed. Maybe that's the trick, never correct a flattering legend. But in truth, hearing those words felt like coming home again. A few months later, I received a message that made me pause. It was from Mom. I hadn't heard from her since the letter from Lily. I stared at the subject line for a full minute before clicking it open. "Courtney, I saw the documentary. I won't pretend I understood everything you did, or why you did it. But your father and I watched it together." We cried. "I realized that maybe I never let you show us who you were because I was afraid I'd lose the version of you I thought I needed. I'm sorry. If you ever want to come home, the door is open. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times before the words really landed. Not perfect, not eloquent, but real, and that was enough. I didn't reply right away. I needed time, not to forgive, but to feel. To let the wound breathe. When I finally did, I kept it simple. "Thank you for watching. I hope someday we can talk in person. I'm okay now." Really. Months passed, and slowly, that door between us opened again. Not wide, just enough to let the light in. We started with small steps. Phone calls about the weather. Then photos of the Foundation students. Then, one day, Mom sent me a message that made me laugh out loud. "I showed your photo to the ladies' book club. They all cried." Progress, I thought. One quiet Sunday morning, I visited Lily. Her daughter, baby Courtney, was crawling across the living room floor, laughing at the sound of her own voice. "She looks like you," Lily said softly. I smiled. "Poor thing." I smiled. "Poor thing." Lily laughed. "No, really. She has your eyes. Curious about everything." I knelt beside the baby, who was tugging on a camera strap. "Don't tell me she's starting early," I joked. "Already obsessed," Lily said. I handed the strap to the little one. "Well, if she grows up to take her own light seriously, that'll make 2 of us." Lily looked at me for a long moment. "You really are happy, aren't you?" I nodded. Finally. That night, as I drove home, I thought about something I once said in an interview. Photography is the art of remembering who you are. Now I understood it in a way I hadn't before. Each frame I'd ever taken, every wedding, every portrait, every self-doubt, had been a way of coming back to myself. And the most beautiful thing? I wasn't alone anymore. Ethan met me at the door with a camera in his hands. "Still working?" I teased. "Always," he said, raising the camera. Smile. I rolled my eyes but smiled anyway. The shutter clicked. What was that for? I asked. For us, he said. For the frame beyond the frame, and as the flash faded, I realized he was right. Because every story, even the painful ones, deserves a picture at the end, not as proof that you survived, but as a reminder that you lived. That night, the city outside my window was quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but full. Seattle lights shimmered like scattered memories, and in that glow, I finally understood something I'd spent a lifetime chasing. Closure isn't the end of a story. It's the moment you stop needing anyone else to rewrite it for you. For years, I had believed home was a place I had to return to, but standing there surrounded by my own photographs, my own light, my own life, I realized home was something I had built along the way. The version of me that once begged for belonging had found it. Not in forgiveness, but in freedom. Ethan walked into the room, his voice low. You okay? It is not was on not of side. Not of there. Not of there was on right it's. Not of there. It is not of there was on right it's. I turned toward him, smiling softly. Yeah, I said. I finally am. He looked at the picture on my desk, the little girl with the camera, sunlight across her face, and reached for my hand. She'd be proud of you. I laughed quietly. Maybe she finally gets to rest now. Outside, the first light of dawn began to rise. Soft and golden, the same color as that Italian sky that changed everything. And as the city woke, I whispered to the girl in the photograph. We made it home. Facing my own reflection. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the foundation's hallways in the dark, the old floorboards creaking softly. When I reached Uncle Ray's study, I sat down at his desk, the same one where he'd written letters to me years ago. For months, I'd been teaching others to heal, to forgive, to rebuild, but I'd never really asked myself if I'd forgiven them. My parents. Mom's voice from our last call echoed in my head. I thought I was teaching you loyalty, but I was teaching you fear. Was she trying? Had she changed? I didn't know, but maybe forgiveness didn't mean trust. Maybe it just meant setting yourself free from needing payback. I opened a new document and typed the words. Dear Mom and Dad, I don't hate you. I don't even wish you harm, but I can't go back to who I was when I let you control my life. You taught me responsibility. I just finally learned to apply it to myself. I never sent it. But writing it felt like unclenching a fist I didn't know I'd been holding for years. The turning point. A month later, Lena came rushing into my office, breathless, smiling. They dropped the case, she cried. The police said there's enough evidence that my mom was the one using my identity. They're helping me clear my credit record. I stood and hugged her, something I rarely did with clients. That's incredible, Lena. You did it. She pulled back, eyes shining. No. We did it. Then she said something I'll never forget. You saved me before I even knew I was drowning. The words hit deep, not as praise, but as a mirror. Because years ago, Uncle Ray had done the same for me. I realized then, this was how legacy worked. Not through money or bloodlines, but through acts of protection passed down like torches in the dark. The reunion. One weekend, I decided to drive back to Oak Ridge for the first time since Uncle Ray's funeral. Not to visit my parents, at least. That's what I told myself. But as I passed their street, my hands turned the wheel before my mind could stop them. The house looked smaller. The paint had peeled. The roses Mom once loved were gone. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, just watching. Then the door opened, and Mom stepped out with a cane, slower, older. She didn't see me, but in that moment, something inside me softened. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I whispered into the steering wheel. I forgive you, Mom. I forgive all of it. Then I drove away, not out of anger, but release, passing it forward. The next time Lena came by, she had something behind her back. When she handed it to me, I nearly cried. It was a framed quote written in her neat handwriting. Love built on guilt will always collapse, but love built on truth never does. For charity, from Lena. From Lena. I hung it right by the entrance of the foundation. Every person who walks in now sees it before they sit down, because that's the story. Not about debt or family or revenge, but about transformation. The quiet ending. A few weeks later, I hosted our first Next Chapter night, a gathering for people who had completed their financial recovery programs. Lena was there, standing tall, telling her story to a room full of strangers. I used to think love meant giving until you disappeared, she said. But now I know love can mean protecting yourself too. When the room erupted in applause, I felt something shift, a weight lifting, a circle closing. Uncle Ray's porch light still glowed outside, flickering like it always did. And as I locked up that night, I looked up at the stars and whispered, "We did it, Uncle." The story didn't end with me. Success has a strange way of sneaking up on you. One day you're fighting to keep the lights on, and the next everyone wants a piece of your time. That's what the Ray Carter Foundation had become, a national nonprofit. Offices in 4 states, partnerships with schools, banks, even local governments. We were changing lives, thousands of them. And yet, somewhere in the middle of all the good, I started losing pieces of myself. Always one more thing. The first sign was small. Missed lunches, late nights. Just one more email, I'd tell myself, even as the sun rose behind my laptop. Then came the meetings, endless rows of faces on Zoom, all asking for guidance, funding, attention. I said yes to everything because how could I not? I'd built this from nothing. I couldn't let it crumble. But one morning, during a live webinar, I forgot the name of our own program. It slipped right out of my mind, mid-sentence. I froze on camera for 7 full seconds, long enough for the moderator to step in. Afterward, Chloe called, "Shar, when's the last time you slept?" I laughed it off. "You sound like my therapist." "Yeah," she said quietly. And she'd probably say the same thing I'm about to. "You're burning out." I didn't answer. Because I knew she was right. The day I collapsed. It happened 3 weeks later, during a conference in Chicago. Hundreds of people in suits, bright lights, applause. I was on stage, giving a speech I'd written 100 times. Financial freedom begins when we stop mistaking obligation for love. And then nothing. The world tilted. My vision went gray around the edges. Next thing I knew, I was backstage, flat on the floor, paramedics hovering. "Dehydration," one said. "And exhaustion. You need to rest." Rest. The word sounded foreign, almost ridiculous. But lying there, staring at the ceiling of a hotel conference room, I realized something terrifying. I'd built a life teaching people how to set boundaries, and I'd lost my own. Forced stillness. They made me take 2 weeks off. No laptop, no phone, no emails. At first, I hated it. I kept pacing my apartment, checking my watch, pretending I wasn't counting the hours. But by the 4th day, something strange happened. I started breathing again, really breathing. The first inhale that wasn't a gasp between tasks. The first exhale that didn't carry guilt. I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, and watched Denver's skyline fade into dusk. No deadlines, no noise, just me, and the quiet hum of the city. For the first time in years, I asked myself, what do I actually want? Not the mission, not the metrics, just me. The question scared me, because I didn't have an answer. The unfinished canvas. A week into my forced break, I found my old watercolor set tucked in a closet. The same one I'd used when I first moved here, before the foundation, before the interviews, before everything became so big. I spread the paints out on the table and stared at the blank paper. It was like looking at a mirror, untouched, expectant, a little intimidating. Then I started painting. No plan, no purpose, just color. Blue for peace, green for healing, red for the fire that still burned inside me, even when I didn't want it to. When I was done, I sat there, brush in hand, and cried. Because it hit me somewhere along the way. I'd stopped creating and started performing. I wasn't building a legacy anymore. I was maintaining an image, and that realization broke me open in the best possible way. The call from Camden. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Camden." I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, you okay?" "Better than I deserve," he said with a laugh. "I heard what happened in Chicago. News travels fast." I muttered. "Chloe told me. Said you finally took a break." "About time." I smiled faintly. "You sound like my little brother again." There was a pause. I actually called for something else." "What's up?" "I've been thinking of starting a branch of the foundation here in Illinois. Focused on young men recovering from debt and gambling. Maybe call it the Reset Project. Like your first pilot program." I blinked. "Camden. That's incredible." "Yeah, well," he said, voice soft. "You gave me the blueprint. I figured it's time I built something good with it." Pride swelled in my chest, the kind that doesn't shout, just warms quietly. "Do it," I said. "You'll be perfect for it." He chuckled. "Guess you really forgave me, huh?" "I did," I said. "Not all at once. But enough to let the past stop owning me." There was a long pause. Then he said, "You sound like Uncle Ray." And for the first time, I didn't deflect it. A different kind of growth. When I finally returned to the foundation, I didn't rush back into the old pace. I walked through the doors slowly, greeted everyone, and went straight to the classroom instead of my office. Lena was there, leading a session on budgeting for college students. Watching her teach, confident and grounded, nearly brought me to tears. She caught my eye mid-sentence and smiled the same shy, grateful smile she'd given me the first day we met. And suddenly, it clicked. This was never supposed to be about me. Uncle Ray didn't leave me that house so I could be the star of a success story. He left it so I could build something that could run without me. Legacy isn't leadership. It's letting go. Letting go. That afternoon, I called a meeting with my board. "Effective next month," I announced. "I'm stepping down as executive director." There were a. Now Johnny. The room went silent. I'll stay on as founder and advisor, but it's time to let new voices lead. I've done my part. Now it's their turn. One of the coordinators, a kind woman named Elise, looked at me with tears in her eyes. Charity. Are you sure? I nodded. The foundation is bigger than me now. That's how I know it worked. It felt terrifying and freeing. For the first time since this all began, I didn't feel responsible for everyone else's survival. The road trip. A month later, I packed my car with a few bags, my paints, and a map dotted with red pins, small towns across the U.S., where people had written letters to the foundation. Places I'd never been, faces I'd never met. I wasn't running away this time. I was going toward something, the quiet, the unknown, the next version of me. Each stop became a chapter. A diner owner in Nebraska who used our budgeting class to save her restaurant. A single dad in Arizona who started a men's support group. A college student in Utah who opened her own microfund for first-generation students. Everywhere I went, pieces of my story echoed, proof that healing travels farther than pain. The last stop, the last pin on my map, was a small coastal town in Oregon. They'd just opened a new community center modeled after our foundation. As I stood there on the beach afterward, the Pacific wind tangling my hair, I realized something simple and profound. I didn't need to keep proving my worth. I'd already turned survival into service. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky gold and violet. I pulled out my journal, something I hadn't touched since therapy, and wrote, "Peace isn't the absence of work. It's the presence of purpose, without the weight of proving it." I closed the notebook, breathing in the salt air. This wasn't an ending. It was the pause before a new story began. And maybe, for once, I didn't need to plan what came next. That night, when the house finally went quiet, I stood alone on the old porch, the same one where I once cried for the family I thought I'd lost. Now, the light above the door flickered softly, like it was breathing with me. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, or grief, or even relief. I just felt still. Maybe peace doesn't come when everyone apologizes. Maybe it comes when you stop needing them to. Behind me, the house that once held so much pain now glowed with warmth, laughter from volunteers echoing in the distance, children's voices carried by the wind. And as I looked up at the night sky, I whispered, "Uncle Ray, you were right. Love and rescue aren't the same thing. But this," I placed my hand over my heart, "this is what real love feels like." The breeze answered with silence, gentle, forgiving, infinite. And I realized something simple and profound. The story didn't end with survival. It began with forgiveness.